Jerome was 38 years old, earned a steady $63,450 a year assembling high-end refrigerators at the GE Appliance Park in Louisville, and knew his marriage was over. He knew it with the same certainty that he knew the precise torque required for a compressor mounting bolt. The knowledge didn't scream. It hummed, a low, constant vibration beneath the surface of his life, a frequency only he could feel. Tonight, that hum would finally break into a shattering silence. It was 8 p.m. on a Tuesday in late October. The air outside their $450,000 Cherokee Triangle home was crisp with the promise of a cold front, but inside the atmosphere was thick and stagnant. He had prepared dinner as he often did: pan-seared salmon with a lemon dill sauce, roasted asparagus, and a quinoa salad. It was the kind of meal Sharon called aspirational, something she'd seen in a magazine. For him it was just food, fuel for the long shifts standing on the concrete floor of Assembly Line 3. He placed her plate before her on the $3,200 oak dining table she'd insisted upon 2 years ago. The table was the centerpiece of a room he no longer recognized as his own. Gray walls, abstract art that looked like angry smudges of paint, a $1,500 piece from a gallery in New Lou, and a sleek, minimalist light fixture that cost more than his first car. Sharon sat, scrolling through her phone, a faint, self-satisfied smile on her face. Her deep brown skin was luminous under the expensive lighting, her hair styled in intricate twists that must have cost a fortune at the salon she frequented. "This looks fine, Jerome," she said, not looking up from the screen. Her thumb moved in a rapid, endless swipe. He sat opposite her, his hands resting on his knees beneath the table. They were strong hands, calloused and sure from 2 decades of working with steel and wire. He wore his simple $89 Timex watch, its quiet ticking a counterpoint to the silent tension in the room. He looked at his wife, a woman he once thought he knew better than himself. Tonight, she was a stranger wearing a $280 silk blouse, her attention captured by a glowing rectangle of glass and silicone. This scene, or a version of it, had become the defining portrait of their marriage. His quiet presence, her dismissive absence. He had no idea how wrong he was about the depths of that absence, but he was about to find out. What is a man to do when the woman he loves looks at him with contempt? When she sees his steady hands and thinks them weak, his quiet nature and calls it passivity? For months, Jerome had absorbed these silent blows, these daily dismissals that chipped away at his spirit more than any shouted insult ever could. But people underestimate the quiet ones. They mistake stillness for inaction, silence for surrender. They had no idea what was coming. The facade of their life had been meticulously constructed, mostly by Sharon. Jerome provided the foundation, his steady, reliable paycheck that covered the $2,800 monthly mortgage on their 3-bedroom home, the utilities, the property taxes. Sharon, a part-time marketing consultant for a boutique firm, provided the expensive, stylish finishes. Her income was sporadic, but her taste was consistently extravagant. He remembered a Saturday morning 3 years prior, standing in the kitchen as sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. He was drinking coffee from his favorite chipped mug, a souvenir from a long-ago trip to the Smoky Mountains. It had cost him $5. He was happy. The house was quiet. He was planning to spend the afternoon working on the engine of his 2012 Toyota Camry, a car with 187,000 miles that he maintained with religious devotion. Sharon had walked in, wearing a brand-new $180 athleisure set, holding a glossy design magazine. "Jerome, we have to do something about this dining room. It's a disaster." He looked from the magazine to the dining room. It seemed fine to him. A solid, functional table he'd inherited from his grandmother. 6 chairs, a buffet. "What's wrong with it?" "What's right with it?" she'd countered, her voice laced with a theatrical despair. "It's so heavy, so dated. It doesn't say anything about who we are." She flipped the magazine open to a marked page. It showed a room that looked like a modern art museum, sparse, cold, and gray. This is what we need. Clean lines, sophistication. The price tag for the table in the magazine was listed in small print, $3,200. The 6 chairs were $400 each. The light fixture was another $200. "Sharon, that's over $6,000. That's 3 months of mortgage payments." "It's an investment, Jerome. An investment in our home, in our lifestyle." She'd put her arms around his neck, her voice softening into a purr. "Don't you want us to have a beautiful home? A place we can be proud to entertain in?" He had relented. He always relented. He took on extra overtime shifts for 2 months, the fluorescent lights of the factory humming late into the night, his body aching, to pay for the new dining room set. When it was delivered, he helped the movers carry his grandmother's table out to the curb, a lump forming in his throat as he watched the solid mahogany, filled with memories of family dinners and holiday laughter, get hauled away like trash. The new table sat in the dining room, mostly unused. They rarely entertained. Her friends, with their talk of stock portfolios and European vacations, made him feel small and clumsy. His friends, fellow mechanics and line workers, stopped coming over after Sharon once referred to their conversation about carburetors as utterly pedestrian. The dollar tag details of their life became a constant source of friction. There was the $700 Armani suit she insisted he buy for her firm's annual gala, which he wore once and then stored carefully in a garment bag, terrified of damaging it. He'd stood awkwardly in a corner all night sipping a single club soda, feeling like an imposter in the sea of wealth, while Sharon flitted around the room, laughing and networking. He'd worn his reliable $89 Timex, a stark contrast to the gleaming Rolexes and diamond-encrusted watches on the wrists of the other men. He felt the weight of their judgment, but mostly he felt the sting of her embarrassment. Another time, she'd come home with a new handbag, a sleek leather creation that cost $800. "It was on sale," she'd chirped, avoiding his eyes. That same week, he'd had to explain to her that they couldn't afford the $1,500 repair his Camry needed for its transmission, and that he would have to spend the weekend fixing it himself in the garage. She had sighed dramatically. "Can't you just get a new car, Jerome? A real car? That thing is an embarrassment." His car wasn't an embarrassment. It was reliable. It was paid for. It was a symbol of his ability to maintain and care for things, to make them last. He loved that car, but to her, it was just another piece of evidence of his failure to launch, his lack of ambition. The contrast was stark and constant. Her white BMW 3 Series, a $43,000 lease she called a business expense, parked next to his aging Camry in the driveway. Her world was about appearance. His was about function. Their life together was a constant grinding collision of those two philosophies. The house on Oakmont Drive was less a home and more a stage for a play he had never auditioned for, where he was perpetually miscast. The escalating betrayal wasn't a single, dramatic event. It was a slow, corrosive drip of cruelty that eroded the very foundations of their marriage. It began with small things, casual remarks, that were sharp as broken glass. One evening he came home from a 10-hour shift, his muscles screaming, the smell of ozone and machine oil clinging to his clothes. He was proud of the work he'd done that day, troubleshooting a complex wiring harness issue that had stumped the engineers. He felt a sense of accomplishment. He walked into the living room to find Sharon on a video call with one of her friends. "Oh, he's home," she said into her laptop, her voice dripping with a kind of weary condescension. She turned the screen toward him. "Say hi to Brenda, Jerome." He managed a tired smile and a wave. Hey, Brenda. Sharon turned the laptop back. Anyway, as I was saying, it's just so hard being married to someone with no ambition. He's perfectly happy putting screws in refrigerators all day. Can you imagine? She laughed, a high, brittle sound. He just doesn't get it. He doesn't understand the drive to be something more. Jerome stood frozen in the doorway. The pride he'd felt just moments before curdling into shame and anger. He was invisible. His hard work, the work that paid for the roof over her head and the very laptop she was using to mock him, was reduced to putting screws in refrigerators. He retreated to the garage, the only space in the house that still felt like his, and sat in the dark for an hour, the laughter echoing in his ears. The cruelty became more direct. The gym became her sanctuary, and her trainer, a man named Cole, became a recurring character in her stories. Cole says I have perfect form, she would boast. Cole pushed me so hard today I can barely walk. She talked about Cole more than she ever talked about him. He started noticing things. She guarded her phone like it was a state secret, angling the screen away from him whenever he entered a room. She started working late more often, coming home smelling not of sweat and gym chalk, but of a faint, unfamiliar men's cologne, a musky, expensive scent that was nothing like his simple Old Spice. The Tuesdays and Thursdays became a pattern. She would leave around 6 p.m. in her $300 Lululemon workout set, her $120 gym bag slung over her shoulder. "Going to get my butt kicked by Cole," she'd call out cheerfully. She would return close to 10 p.m., her hair still perfectly styled, her makeup miraculously intact for someone who had supposedly just endured a grueling workout. She was always glowing, but it wasn't the flush of exercise. It was something else. The breaking point, the moment the deep, humming suspicion turned into a roaring certainty, came at a dinner party about 10 months before the final confrontation. It was at the home of Sharon's boss, a sprawling mansion in a gated community. Jerome, in his one good suit, felt like a fish out of water again. The conversation turned to travel. Someone was talking about their recent trip to Italy. Sharon, holding a glass of 100-a-bottle champagne, sighed dramatically. "I would kill to go to Italy, but Jerome's not exactly the adventurous type. The farthest he's traveled is to a GE conference in Nashville." The table chuckled politely. Jerome felt his face burn. Later, a man with a slick, expensive haircut asked Jerome what he did. Before he could answer, Sharon jumped in. "Oh, Jerome works with his hands," she said, a dismissive wave of her own hand. "It's very noble." The word noble was delivered with such a heavy payload of pity and scorn that it landed like a physical blow. But the final, unforgivable act happened on the drive home. He was quiet, the weight of the evening pressing down on him. "You were very quiet tonight," she said, a critical edge to her voice. "You never know what to say to these people, do you?" "They're your people, Sharon, not mine," she scoffed. "And what exactly are your people like? Do they just grunt and talk about sports?" "They're good people, honest people. They don't judge a man by the car he drives or the price of his suit." This, apparently, was the wrong thing to say. She turned to him, her face a mask of fury in the intermittent glow of the streetlights. "Oh, I'm so sorry my life isn't simple enough for you. I'm sorry I want more than a paycheck and a pension. I'm trying to build something, a life, and you're just there. You're an anchor, Jerome, a comfortable, predictable, boring anchor." They drove the rest of the way in a silence that was louder than any argument, but it was a few weeks later that she delivered the line that would become the catalyst for his entire transformation. They were having one of their circular arguments about money. She wanted to book a ski trip to Aspen with her friends, a trip that would cost at least $5,000. "We can't afford it, Sharon," he said, his voice flat. "What do you mean we can't afford it?" "You can't afford it. My friends' husbands make it possible for them to live their lives." I am living my life, Sharon. I'm working hard. I'm paying our bills. She let out a short, bitter laugh. Paying the bills. Is that all you think life is? Don't you ever want more? She looked at him then, her eyes cold and appraising, as if he were a piece of furniture she was tired of. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, laced with venom. You know what your problem is, Jerome? You're weak. You complain, but you'll never do anything about it. You'll never leave. You're too weak. He didn't respond. He just stared at her, the words echoing in the space between them. You'll never leave. You're too weak. It wasn't an insult, it was a verdict. It was her absolute, unshakable belief in his own powerlessness. And in that moment, something inside him shifted. The quiet hum of discontent finally crystallized into a single, cold, hard point of purpose. She had made a critical mistake. She had told him exactly what she thought of him, and in doing so, had freed him from any lingering obligation to be the man she wanted him to be. The anchor was about to show her just how much weight it could pull. The next morning, at 6:47 a.m., Jerome sat in his Camry in the parking lot of a Starbucks on Lexington Road, a place he never went. He had called in sick to work for the first time in 12 years. The decision felt monumental, a seismic shift in his personal geology. He searched on his phone for private investigators in Louisville. The list was long. He scrolled past the flashy ads with promises of getting the truth and looked for something that felt solid, professional. He found a firm called Albright and Associates. The website was simple, no nonsense. The bio for the lead investigator, a woman named Maria Albright, said she was a former police detective. That felt right. He made the call. A calm, professional voice answered. Albright and Associates. Hello, Jerome said, his own voice sounding strange to him. I need to hire an investigator. He met Maria Albright that afternoon in her small, tidy office downtown. She was a woman in her late 50s with sharp, intelligent eyes and a handshake that was firm and reassuring. She didn't have the weary cynicism he expected. Instead, she had an air of quiet competence that immediately put him at ease. He sat in a simple guest chair that probably cost less than one of Sharon's throw pillows. Tell me what's going on, Mr. Jackson, she said, her pen poised over a legal pad. He told her everything. He told her about the late nights, the guarded phone, the cologne, the Tuesdays and Thursdays, the trainer named Cole. He told her about the mockery, the condescension, the constant feeling of being less than. He did not tell her about the emotional pain. He just gave her the facts, the data points. As he spoke, he felt a strange sense of detachment, as if he were describing a problem on an assembly line, a faulty component that needed to be identified and removed. When he finished, he expected pity, or at least a sympathetic nod. Maria Albright simply looked at him, her expression unreadable. And what is it you want to achieve, Mr. Jackson? I want to know the truth, Jerome said. I need proof. Proof can be a painful thing to acquire, she warned. Are you prepared for what you might find? He thought of Sharon's face, her voice laced with contempt as she called him weak. I am, he said, his voice steady. The retainer was $5,000. It was nearly all of his personal savings, the money he kept in a separate account that Sharon didn't know about, his rainy day fund. It felt like pouring rain. He wrote the check without hesitation. The first report arrived via a secure email link 1 week later. It was a Thursday night. Sharon was at the gym. Jerome sat at the old desk in his garage, the air smelling of oil and sawdust, and clicked the link. The report was concise. Subject, Sharon Jackson. Date. Time, 18:05. Subject departs residence in white BMW 3 Series. 1828, subject arrives at Nulu Fitness, enters facility. 1942, subject exits facility with an unidentified white male, see photo 1. Subject and male enter subject's vehicle. 1958, vehicle arrives at the Ambassador Hotel on 4th Street. Subject and male enter the hotel, holding hands, see photos 2 to 5. 2131, subject and male exit hotel. They share a brief, intimate kiss before entering the vehicle, see photos 6-8. 2155, subject drops male at Nulu Fitness to retrieve his vehicle. 2214, subject arrives at residence. He clicked on photo 1. It was a grainy, long-distance shot, but clear enough. There was Sharon laughing, her head tilted back. And there was Cole. Blonde, muscular, the living embodiment of everything she seemed to value. Photos 2 through 5 showed them walking into the hotel, their fingers intertwined. Photo 6 was the one that broke him. The kiss. It wasn't a friendly peck. It was deep, passionate, possessory. It was a kiss she hadn't given Jerome in years. He closed the laptop, a wave of nausea washing over him. The air in the garage suddenly felt thin, suffocating. He leaned forward, resting his head in his hands, and for the first time, he let out a dry, ragged sob. The pain was immense, a physical weight in his chest, but underneath the pain, there was something else. A cold, hard clarity. This was it, the truth. It was ugly and it was brutal, but it was real. The humming was gone, replaced by a single, sharp, undeniable note. For 8 more months, he received these reports every Tuesday and Thursday like clockwork. 47 photographs in total. Each one was another brick in the wall he was building around his heart, another piece of evidence for the case he was methodically constructing. The day after receiving the first report, Jerome made a second call, this time to a lawyer Maria Albright had recommended, a sharp, no-nonsense divorce attorney named Eleanor Vance. Her office was in a sleek glass tower downtown, the kind of place that made him feel underdressed in his work clothes. Her hourly rate was $450, a number that made his stomach clench. Eleanor Vance was the opposite of Maria Albright. Where Albright was quiet and observant, Vance was a whirlwind of focused energy. She was a tall, elegant black woman in her 40s, wearing an $700 Armani suit that radiated power. Her office overlooked the Ohio River, a view that probably cost more per month than his mortgage. "Maria told me the basics," she said, gesturing for him to sit. "She says you're methodical. I like methodical." Jerome placed a single manila folder on her massive mahogany desk. It contained a printout of the PI report and the first batch of photos. "I want to be prepared," he said. Eleanor picked up the photos, her face impassive. She looked at each one, her sharp legal mind already calculating angles and vulnerabilities. "A 2-year affair, you suspect? With her trainer? Predictable? Does she have her own income?" "Some. She calls herself a consultant. I pay for the house, the cars, the insurance, the utilities. Her money is for her." "For her Lululemon and her trips to the salon?" Eleanor finished for him, a glint in her eye. "I've seen this 1,000 times. The high-earning, high-spending spouse and the steady, reliable one who foots the bills. They think the reliable one will just keep taking it. They always underestimate the reliable one." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "Here is what we are going to do, Mr. Jackson. You are going to continue to live your life as if you know nothing. You will go to work. You will be polite. You will not, under any circumstances, confront her. Maria will continue to gather evidence, every report, every photo, every receipt. You will forward to me. We are going to build an ironclad case. We will document every dollar you've spent on this marriage and every dollar she has squandered." For the next 8 months, that's exactly what he did. He became a master archivist of his own heartbreak. He created a binder, a thick 3-ring behemoth he kept hidden in a locked toolbox in the garage. He labeled it Project Weakness, a private, bitter joke. The first section was Evidence of Infidelity. It contained all of Maria Albright's reports, 47 in total, each one detailing the Tuesday-Thursday ritual. Every photograph was printed in high-resolution color and slipped into a protective plastic sleeve. He could chart the progression of their affair through the seasons by the clothes they wore in the photos. The second section was Financials. He spent weeks gathering documents, pay stubs from his job at GE going back 10 years, mortgage statements for the house, property tax receipts, utility bills, car titles, insurance policies. He then went through their joint credit card statements for the past 5 years, a painful and illuminating task. He highlighted every extravagant purchase Sharon had made, the $2,400 Burberry dress she wore once, the weekly $200 salon appointments, the endless stream of charges from high-end restaurants and boutiques in Nulu. He created a spreadsheet, meticulously documenting everything. The total was staggering. Over $150,000 in non-essential personal spending from their joint accounts in 5 years. His contribution to those accounts was nearly 90% of the total deposits. He met with Eleanor Vance once a month. Each time he would bring his updated binder. She would review the new material, nodding in satisfaction. "This is excellent, Jerome. The clearer the financial picture, the stronger our position." During one meeting, about 6 months in, she laid out the final strategy. "When the time is right," she explained, "we will strike. I will file a petition for dissolution of marriage with the court. Simultaneously, I will file a motion for an ex parte asset freeze. That means the moment the judge signs it, all of your joint bank accounts will be frozen. Her credit cards will be shut off. She will not be able to access a single penny of marital funds." It's a drastic move, but given her spending habits and the clear evidence of her dissipating marital assets on her affair, a judge will grant it. "What about the house?" Jerome asked, his voice quiet. The thought of losing his home, the one stable thing in his life, was terrifying. "We will argue that the house is your premarital asset as you use the inheritance from your parents for the down payment. We will fight for you to keep the house. We will use her infidelity and financial recklessness as leverage. We will offer her a settlement. She walks away with her personal belongings, her car, which is a lease anyway, and a modest, one-time payment to get on her feet. In exchange, she signs a non-disclosure agreement, and we don't release the contents of this binder to the public." Jerome nodded slowly, the sheer, brutal efficiency of the plan settling over him. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about consequences. He was no longer a victim. He was a strategist. He was no longer weak. He was a patient, methodical force, gathering strength in the shadows. He was simply waiting for the right moment to turn on the lights. The 8 months of playing dumb were the hardest thing Jerome had ever done. It was a masterclass in self-control, an Olympic-level performance of normalcy, while his world was crumbling and being rebuilt in secret. Each day was a tightrope walk over a canyon of rage and grief. The first few weeks were almost unbearable. Every time Sharon would leave for the gym, a fresh wave of nausea would hit him. He'd hear her cheerful, "Be back later," and the click of the door, and he'd have to grip the edge of the kitchen counter to keep his hands from shaking. He'd look at the clock, picturing her meeting Cole, driving to the Ambassador Hotel, her laughter echoing in a room he paid for. One evening, about a month into his secret project, she came home glowing. She threw her $120 gym bag on the floor and flopped onto the sofa. "Oh my God, I am so beat. Cole is a slave driver. I think I did 1,000 squats." Jerome was in the kitchen, washing the dishes from the simple meal of chicken and rice he'd made for himself. He could smell the faint, musky scent of Cole's cologne clinging to her. He had the latest PI report open on his laptop in the garage. The photos of her kissing Cole outside the hotel burned into his memory. He took a deep, steadying breath. "Sounds tough," he said, his voice miraculously even. "You should probably take a hot bath." "Oh, I will," she said, stretching luxuriously. "But first, can you be a doll and get me a glass of wine? I've earned it." He dried his hands, poured her a glass of the $40 Pinot Noir she liked, and handed it to her. His fingers brushed against hers. For a split second, he felt a jolt of the old affection, a ghost of the love he once had for her. It was immediately followed by a cold wave of revulsion. He saw not his wife, but a woman who had just left her lover's arms. He smiled a tight, empty smile. "Here you go." As he walked away, he heard her mutter to herself, "So predictable." As the months wore on, he got better at it. His performance became more refined. The anger and pain were still there, but he learned to compartmentalize them, to lock them away in a box in his mind next to the binder in the garage. He became an observer in his own life, watching the play unfold with a kind of detached curiosity. There was the time her parents came for dinner. Her father, a proud, retired postal worker, had always liked Jerome. He cornered him in the kitchen while Jerome was helping with the dishes. "How are things, son? Sharon treating you right?" Jerome looked through the doorway into the dining room, where Sharon was showing her mother pictures on her phone, laughing. He thought of the photos on his own phone, the ones from Maria Albright. "Everything's fine, sir. Just fine." The lie tasted like ash in his mouth, but he swallowed it down. Then there was the company picnic for GE. He had to practically beg Sharon to go. "It's so blue-collar," she complained. But she finally agreed, showing up in a white sundress that cost $400, looking like a movie star visiting a refugee camp. He introduced her to his line supervisor, a good man named Gus, who had worked at the plant for 30 years. "So, you're the lucky lady who gets to put up with this one," Gus said, clapping Jerome on the back. Sharon gave a tinkling, artificial laugh. "Oh, he's not so bad. Very steady, like a rock." She said the word rock as if it were a synonym for boring. Later, he overheard her on the phone with a friend hiding behind a large oak tree. "I'm at Jerome's work thing. Yes, it's as awful as you'd imagine. So many beer bellies and bad tattoos. I feel like I need a shower. I can't wait to get to the gym on Tuesday and feel civilized again." He didn't confront her. He just stored the comment away. Another piece of data, another line item in the long ledger of her disrespect. He smiled at her when she came back, offered her a hot dog, and acted as if he had heard nothing. His calmness seemed to unnerve her more than an argument would have. She was expecting a reaction, and when she didn't get one, she grew agitated. The hardest part was the feigned intimacy, the goodnight kisses that felt like pressing his lips to cold marble. The times she would, in a rare moment of what seemed like affection, put her hand on his arm, and he would have to fight the urge to recoil. He was living a double life, and the strain was immense, but with every lie he had to swallow, his resolve hardened. He wasn't just playing dumb. He was gathering strength. He was a deep-sea diver, descending into the crushing blackness of his marriage, knowing that soon, very soon, he would begin his slow, controlled ascent to the surface, into the light. The day of the strike arrived. It was a Tuesday, October 28th, 8 months and 3 days after he first called Maria Albright. At 9 a.m. sharp, Eleanor Vance had filed the petition for dissolution of marriage and the motion for the ex parte asset freeze at the Jefferson County Courthouse. At 9:45 a.m., she had called him. "The judge signed it, Jerome. It's done. The accounts are frozen. The notice is on its way to a process server." "Don't send the server," Jerome had said, his voice calm. "I have a copy. I'll serve her myself tonight." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Are you sure, Jerome? Eleanor asked, a note of concern in her voice. That could get messy. It's already messy, he replied. This is just the cleanup. He had gone to work, moving through his 10-hour shift with a strange sense of serene purpose. His hands were steady, his movements precise. He assembled 16 monogram refrigerators, each one a perfect symphony of sealed systems and electronic controls. His colleagues noticed a difference in him. You're quiet today, Jay, his friend Gus said during their lunch break. Everything okay? Everything is fine, Gus, Jerome had said, a small, genuine smile touching his lips for the first time in months. Everything is finally going to be fine. He left work at 6 p.m. and went home. He didn't stop at the grocery store. He knew exactly what he was going to make. He had the ingredients: pan-seared salmon, roasted asparagus, quinoa salad, her favorite aspirational meal. As he cooked, he moved around the kitchen with an unhurried grace. The house was quiet. Sharon was not home yet. He knew where she was. It was Tuesday. He pictured her at the Ambassador Hotel with Cole, their final tryst. Though she didn't know it, he felt nothing. No anger, no jealousy, just a vast, quiet emptiness where those feelings used to be. He set the $3,200 dining table with their best china, the silverware she'd insisted on, the cloth napkins. He lit 2 candles. He created the perfect stage for the final act of their marriage. At 7:45 p.m., he heard her white BMW pull into the driveway. A few moments later, the front door opened and closed. She walked into the dining room, looking surprised. "Wow," she said, a hint of suspicion in her voice. "What's all this?" She looked beautiful, flushed and vibrant. He could still smell the faint, lingering scent of Cole's cologne. "I made dinner," he said simply. "Sit down." She hesitated for a moment, then sat, placing her $1,800 handbag on the floor beside her chair. She picked up her phone and started scrolling. He brought the plates from the kitchen and set hers in front of her. "This looks fine, Jerome," she said, the same words she always used without looking up. He sat in his chair opposite her. The ticking of his $89 Timex seemed to fill the silence. He ate his salmon slowly, methodically. She picked at her food, her attention fixed on the glowing screen in her hand. After a few minutes of this, she looked up, an annoyed expression on her face. "Is there something you want, Jerome? You're staring." "I was just thinking," he said, his voice even. "Oh, God, don't strain yourself," she said with a dismissive little laugh. It was the casual cruelty he had grown so used to. Tonight it sounded different. It sounded like a validation. He put down his fork. "Do you remember what you told me a while back? During that argument about the Aspen trip?" She rolled her eyes. "I have no idea what you're talking about. I can't be expected to remember every little spat we have." "You said I was weak," he continued, his voice calm and measured. "You said I would complain, but I'd never do anything about it. You said, 'You'll never leave. You're too weak.'" He repeated the words exactly as she had said them. A perfect callback. For the first time, she put her phone down. A flicker of unease crossed her face. "So, what's your point?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached inside the jacket of his simple work coat and pulled out a thick, white 9x12 envelope. It was crisp, clean, and sealed. He placed it on the table and slid it across the polished wood surface. It stopped directly in front of her plate. "What is this?" she asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. "It's for you," he said. She looked from the envelope to his face, searching for a clue. His expression was placid, unreadable. He had spent 8 months perfecting this mask. She picked up the envelope. It was heavier than she expected. She tore it open. Her eyes scanned the first page. It was a formal legal document. She saw the words Jefferson County Court and petition for dissolution of marriage. Her face went white. "What is this? Is this a joke?" she stammered, her voice a choked whisper. He just sat there, silent, watching her. She frantically shuffled through the papers. The next document was the court order. She read the words ex parte motion, asset freeze, all joint accounts. Her breath hitched. Her hand flew to her chest. "Frozen? What do you mean frozen?" she gasped, looking at him, her eyes wide with panic and disbelief. "You can't do that." "I can," he said, his voice still quiet. "I did." Beneath the legal documents was another smaller stack of papers, held together by a single black binder clip. It was the executive summary from Maria Albright. The heading was stark: Surveillance Report, Sharon Jackson and Cole Stevens. She stared at the name, her lover's name, in print, on a legal document. She flipped to the next page. It was a high-resolution 8:10 color photograph. It was photo 6, the kiss. The passionate, undeniable kiss outside the Ambassador Hotel. A sound escaped her throat, a strangled little gasp. She dropped the papers as if they were on fire. They scattered across the expensive table, a collage of her betrayal, timestamps, dates. The address of the hotel repeated over and over. She looked at him, her face a maelstrom of emotions, confusion, shock, fury, and beneath it all, the dawning, horrific understanding of her own catastrophic miscalculation. The man she had called weak, the man she had mocked and dismissed and underestimated at every turn, was sitting across from her at their $3,200 dining table, calmly eating his salmon. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't yelled. He had simply handed her an envelope, and with that one quiet, precise action, he had detonated her entire world. She had frozen, just as he knew she would. The silence in the room was absolute. The cascade of consequences began less than 24 hours later. Sharon, still reeling from the shock, had spent the night in the guest room. The next morning, she tried to use her joint debit card to buy a $6 coffee at the Starbucks on Lexington. "Card declined," the barista said, looking embarrassed for her. She tried another card, a credit card with a $20,000 limit that she used for her essentials. Declined. Panic began to set in. She called the bank from her car, her voice shrill and demanding. The customer service representative was polite but firm. "I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson, but there is a legal hold on this account. All funds are frozen by court order. No transactions, incoming or outgoing, can be processed." "It's Mrs. Jackson!" she shrieked into the phone. But the representative had already moved on, reading from a script. There was nothing they could do. Her next call was to Cole. She reached him at the gym. "Cole, something terrible has happened," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Jerome knows. He knows everything. He's frozen all our accounts. I don't have any money." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Whoa, slow down," Cole said, his voice suddenly distant. He sounded like he was walking into a different room. "What do you mean he knows? How?" "I don't know. He just handed me these papers. There are pictures, Cole. Pictures of us at the hotel." Another pause. Longer this time. "Listen, Sharon," he said, his voice now cold and clinical. "I told you to be careful. This is a mess. I can't be involved in this." "What do you mean you can't be involved? We're in this together." "No," he said, his voice flat. "There is no we. You have a husband, a crazy one, apparently. I'm a personal trainer. I have a reputation to protect. My clients are wealthy, connected people. I can't have my name dragged through a messy divorce. I'm sorry, Sharon. Don't call this number again." He hung up. She stared at her phone in disbelief. The man she had risked her marriage for, the man she thought was her partner in this exciting, secret life, had just cut her loose without a second thought. Desperate, she drove to the Nulu boutique where she was a favored customer. She tried to return the $2,400 Burberry dress she'd only worn once. "I'm sorry," the manager said coolly. "Our policy is store credit only, and this was purchased over a year ago." The manager, who had once fawned over her, now looked at her with a mixture of pity and contempt. News traveled fast in their small, gossipy circle. Her world, which had been built on a foundation of credit and perception, was collapsing in on her. The asset freeze was absolute. The joint checking account held a balance of $14,187. The joint savings, $32,150, all of it locked away. Her personal consulting account, into which she occasionally deposited checks, held a meager $843. Her car lease payment of $650 was due in 3 days. Her phone bill, her half of the insurance, all of it was due. She finally called the lawyer whose name was on the petition, Eleanor Vance. She was put on hold for 10 minutes before Eleanor's paralegal came on the line. "Mr. Jackson's attorney is not available to speak with you," the paralegal said in a monotone. "As you are now an opposing party in a legal action, all communication must go through your legal counsel. If you do not have counsel, you are advised to retain one immediately." She had no money to retain counsel. The top divorce lawyers in Louisville required retainers of $10,000 or more, money she did not have and could not access. She was trapped. Every door she tried was locked. Every person she called for help either turned away or was powerless to assist. She had built her life on a scaffolding of lies and credit, and Jerome, with one quiet, precise move, had kicked the foundations out from under it. She was in free fall, and the ground was rushing up to meet her. The weakness she had so confidently projected onto him had been a mirror all along. A year and a half later, the Louisville air was warm, with the promise of summer. It was a Saturday evening, and the sound of laughter and lively conversation spilled from the open windows of the house on Oakmont Drive. Jerome stood at his grill on the back patio, flipping burgers, a genuine, easy smile on his face. The house was his. The divorce had been finalized 6 months after he'd served the papers. Faced with the mountain of evidence and the financial stranglehold, Sharon had been forced to accept the settlement Eleanor Vance had offered. She walked away with her leased BMW, which was repossessed 3 months later, her personal belongings, and a one-time payment of $15,000, enough to get a small apartment and start over, but a fraction of what she felt she was owed. The last he heard, she was working as a receptionist at a dental office and living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment across the river in Indiana. The first thing Jerome did after she moved out was get rid of the dining room table. He sold the $3,200 oak monstrosity and its matching chairs on Craigslist for $500 to a young couple who were thrilled with the bargain. The sterile gray walls were repainted in a warm, welcoming cream color. The angry smudge abstract art was replaced by framed schematics of classic refrigerator compressor designs, beautiful in their technical precision. In place of the old table, he built a new one himself. He spent weeks in his garage, which he now called his workshop, crafting a large, sturdy table from reclaimed Kentucky oak. The wood was warm and filled with character, its imperfections telling a story. It was big enough to seat 12 people comfortably. He had sanded and finished it by hand, the work steady and satisfying, imbuing the wood with his own quiet strength. Now, that table was full. Every other Saturday, Jerome hosted a dinner for the younger apprentices from the GE Appliance Park. Young men and women, mostly in their early 20s, just starting out, eager to learn but often struggling to make ends meet. He'd started it on a whim, inviting a young apprentice who was having car trouble over to help him fix it, and then offering him a home-cooked meal. The kid had been so grateful that Jerome decided to make it a regular thing. Tonight the table was laden with burgers, potato salad, and corn on the cob. The conversation was a boisterous mix of shop talk, jokes, and dreams for the future. They talked about wiring harnesses and torque specs, but they also talked about saving for a down payment on a house, about their kids, about their hopes. There was no pretense, no judgment. A young woman named Keisha, a single mother with bright, intelligent eyes, raised her glass of iced tea. "To Jerome," she said, her voice full of genuine affection, "for showing us that a steady hand and a good heart are the most valuable tools you can have." Everyone cheered, raising their glasses. Jerome felt a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the heat from the grill. This was community. This was purpose. This was a home, filled not with expensive objects, but with life, with gratitude, with authentic connection. He had found that true strength wasn't about ambition or aggression. It was about resilience. It was about knowing your own worth, even when others couldn't see it. It was about the quiet, steady, methodical work of building a life of integrity, one solid, well-placed piece at a time. His wealth wasn't measured in dollars or possessions, but in the respect of his peers, the peace in his own home, and the satisfaction of a job well done. He looked at the happy faces around his handmade table, their deep brown skin glowing in the warm light of the setting sun, and he knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that he was the richest man in the world. What do you think makes a person truly strong? Is it the noise they make, or the quiet resilience they show when tested? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and please remember to like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in unexpected places.